It's time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's papers. Joining us are the Athletics football correspondent David Ornstein and Guardian sports writer Jonathan Liu. Hi guys, welcome to you both. We'll chat to you in just a moment. First, let's get to those back pages. Starting with the Telegraph, England's win leads the Telegraph sports section with Bukayo Saka enjoying the limelight after another brilliant goal. The back page of the Express goes with Serb and volley, and there's also a mention at the top of Mark Wood's injury scare ahead of the Ashes. No sign of Trent Alexander-Arnold for England at Wembley, and Jonathan has written a piece in The Guardian about his struggles with Real Madrid. We'll take a look at that. And what a story for the Republic of Ireland. They defy the odds to beat Portugal. And there was extra drama as Ronaldo was sent off as well. The Irish Independent has held a famous victory that keeps their World Cup hopes alive. We'll get to those headlines in just a moment, but first let's hear from England boss Thomas Tuchel following their 2-0 win over Serbia.
This is not about building a starting 11, it's about building a team. And that means that sometimes they're all big players in their club. They're all used to play. They're all disappointed. Everyone, this is normal, but they buy into this idea of building a team, and this is what we want, this is what we need. There is no other way around it. Only if we're a strong group who can put the ego behind, who can put the disappointment behind, and then contribute and give the coach a headache what to do in the next match. That's the only way. And I like it because it's natural for this team. The atmosphere after the matches, during the matches, is the right energy, and I think everyone is treating everyone with respect. The ones on the pitch know that they can rely on everyone who comes from the bench to finish the game. You could see the impact today, and it has to stay like this.
Let's reflect on those comments with our guests now, and start with you, David. Interesting to hear Thomas Tuchel there reference, I guess, that team selection that dominated the build-up with Jude Bellingham on the bench. He said, we've all got big players here, we're building a team. He talked about the strength of the bench. What did you make of what he was saying there?
Well, he's absolutely determined, Mark, to win this World Cup, to complete the mission that he was employed to do. And we're seeing in his selection, there's no sort of sentiment or sympathy or picking players on reputation. It's about competition for places and playing players in the positions that he feels they're at their best, irrespective of necessarily where they're playing for their clubs, in the case of, say, Phil Foden. I think the starting lineup was understandable. Morgan Rogers was in possession of the position. I thought he did pretty well. Again, fourth start in a row at number 10. And you would say for now he hangs on to that. And it will be a real battle with Jude Bellingham, who also looked good when he came on and played a role, of course, in that Eze goal. And there's a really crucial 6-7 months ahead now in domestic competition. Obviously, there'll be the March international break as well for players to really stake their claim. And this is the sort of competition, the vying for places, and England looking pretty fluid, that people have been wanting for a long time. And that should bode well ahead of the tournament in America. And every time you hear Thomas Tuchel speak, you can sense his absolute steadfast will to make progress and impact at that tournament. And even if he upsets people, occasionally his comments are a bit misplaced, but he's going to do it his way, and he'll be judged by the outcome in the US, Canada and Mexico.
Jonathan, we're seeing lots of pictures on the back page of a very happy Bukayo Saka. Thomas Tuchel wanted more goals from him, and he got a goal from him against Serbia. Do you think he's earned the right, Thomas Tuchel, to make these bold calls? When you look at his record in qualifying, 7 wins from 7, no goals conceded.
Well, I think he's earned the right to make those bold calls because he's the coach, and I think everyone respects what he's done in the game, and everyone respects his authority. And I think certainly the players that are in the squad, that are in the camps, really appreciate the clarity of communication and the clarity of ideas. I think players they kind of know what's expected of them. That the messaging has been quite simple but very powerful. And I think, you see that on the pitch. It was really interesting to see him talking there about not building a starting 11. You're building a team. That it's all about cohesion. It's all about culture. It's about combinations. It's about creating an ethos off the pitch, through the camp, through all the off-field stuff, that you then see manifesting on the pitch. We saw that. England played a very different game in the last 25 minutes to what it was in the first hour. They made substitutions. Players came on: Bellingham, Henderson, Eze. But the cohesion was still there. The combinations were still there. There wasn't any real drop off in energy. I think that speaks volumes as to where England are culture wise and ethos wise, and I think mood wise at this stage in the cycle.
David, what do you think of the strength and depth that England were able to display against Serbia? When you think about bringing on Eze, Bellingham, and Foden off the bench, if that really must please Tuchel and his staff.
Yeah, the depth is unprecedented in my lifetime, certainly. People will still say that, the so-called golden era had a stronger starting lineup, and that's one to debate. But it's really impressive how England have built quality in pretty much every position. There's only really question marks around who will start at number 10, and you don't know what will happen between now and June. Fitness and form. Maybe the left side of the attack, but Marcus Rashford's in possession of it at the moment. And then at left back too, where Nico O'Reilly did well, but Miles Lewis-Skelly, Tino Livramento will hope to have something to say about it. But when you look at that bench, it's almost looking rugby-like. And we know in the build-up to the England-New Zealand game on Saturday that Steve Borthwick's got some incredible players on the bench, British and Irish Lions, who aren't making the starting lineup. And it's looking like it'll be quite similar for Thomas Tuchel out at the tournament, because the likes of Bellingham and Foden and Eze coming on and combining for that second goal shows that England have finishers, and not just to make up the numbers, but to sort of propel England forward, to capitalise on the space that opened up. And that's taking nothing away from those who started, who really at times suffocated Serbia. They've got 10 wins in a row. They've not conceded in this entire qualification campaign. Jordan Pickford looking sort of imperious at the back. And yeah, we've been in this position before in qualification campaigns, and it will all be judged at the tournament. But there is a feeling, despite the young age of some of the players, of real maturity. They look ready to deliver. There's high-level performances, and the expectations of the coach match that. And he's a winner, which is crucial, because England haven't had that before in the modern era. A coach who's used to winning the biggest trophies, and now his task will be to deliver it. And from what we're seeing of that depth, Mark, England will fancy their chances of rivaling pretty much any squad at the tournament.
The call over Bellingham, Jonathan, really dominated the build-up to this game. The Times reference it. Bellingham makes his point, returning hero's classy cameo. Only adds to the headache for Tuchel. Do you think Tuchel is taking a very different approach here to what we've seen in the past? Those of us of a certain age, Jonathan, will remember times where England bosses were trying to fit Scholes, Lampard and Gerrard into the same team. And basically Tuchel said, I'm not doing that. I'm approaching it in a different way, and I'm really focused on the system and the end result on that front.
Yeah, I mean, it helps that you have in Rice and Anderson potentially two of the best, holding midfielders, if you want to call them that. Their job is obviously much bigger than that, but you have two of the best players in that position in Europe, probably. Obviously, we talk a huge amount about the strength in depth, and rightly so. I think we probably spend 95% of our time discussing the England team, talking about the wealth of attacking options, Bellingham and Rodgers and Palmer and what have you. I just want to raise the defence a little bit, because we saw Serbia obviously fighting for their qualification. They were fighting for their future in the competition, and when they counter-attacked, and we know the attacking talent they have, I don't think England looked quite as secure as you would want them to against that standard of opposition. I think John Stones was mostly secure, but I think it showed that he's barely started for Manchester City this season. I thought Nico O'Reilly, I was really impressed by him going forward. Obviously, has a lot to learn going back, defensively. So I think that part of the game is, we spend so long talking about England's attacking options. I think if Tuchel debriefs this, he will look at some of the oppositions that Serbia had in transition and think, if that's Mbappe, or if that's Endrick or somebody running at them in the World Cup, or Lamine Yamal. Like, how is that defence going to hold up?
David, I want to get your take on what Jonathan was alluding to there about really the opposition England have faced in World Cup qualifying. Yes, they've won all their matches, but when you look at the group, Albania, Serbia, Latvia, Andorra, not exactly heavyweights there. Does what England have done in qualifying really need to be put into some sort of context?
Yeah, it does, because we've been here before. I guess it's more on the evidence of what we're seeing, that there's plenty to be encouraged by, but there's also cause for concern, as Johnny points out there, defensively. Although you'd expect, of course, Mark Guehi to come back. I thought Ezri Konsa was brilliant tonight, actually, but the test was limited and Serbia have gone out of the competition in pretty limp fashion. England's biggest test, you could say, so far under Tuchel came in that friendly against a superb Senegal team at the City Ground, and they were beaten pretty comprehensively, and that didn't make for a nice atmosphere. And we were expressing very different thoughts on this programme that night. What's going to happen in March? Are they going to play some top level opposition for the first time under Tuchel? I mean, the very top level, and players you mentioned there like Mbappe, it gives you sort of shivers if you're an England fan at the thought of what he could do. And we've seen, major tournaments under Gareth Southgate, when it really comes to the very top level, England have obviously been beaten. And that would be a concern going towards the tournament, because they've not been tested. And somebody like Elliot Anderson looks to have that holding midfield position locked in now. And I thought, again, he was superb tonight. His decision-making is just sublime. However, he hasn't been tested at international level against some of the very best midfielders on the planet. And that's what they'll come up against, especially in the knockout stage if they get there at the tournament, as well as the conditions and the time zones and everything everybody's been talking about. So that does give a bit of pause for thought and some concern, yeah.
You've both talked about the defensive side of things. So, Jonathan, it's a good opportunity to turn to you and focus on your piece that you've written about Trent Alexander-Arnold and his introduction, if you like, at Real Madrid. Just tell us a bit about what you've been writing about as far as Alexander-Arnold is concerned.
Yeah, obviously, not in England squad, not in the Madrid team. Alonso's preferred Fede Valverde at right back. He's been injured for part of the season. I think a lot of people who should probably know better, I've been writing him off slightly. And I think what I wanted to write about was the way that narratives and storytelling and almost the way that you are perceived shapes so much of how we see and talk about a player. I think these days players need people to advocate for them. They need people who are going to fight their corner. And I think since leaving Liverpool, Alexander-Arnold has obviously lost that. He's lost a lot of the goodwill he had with the Liverpool fan base. And so you get narratives taking hold, like he can't defend, and we can debate his defending, but that has basically become it's become like established fact now. The fact is that he's still an incredible footballer, a player who pretty much revolutionised his position. And we are probably one Reece James injury from him being back in the squad and very much in the mix. And he will obviously play I think a bigger role with Alonso's Real Madrid when he gets back to full fitness and when he has a proper run of fitness. So I think we are slightly too quick to judge players. I think he's 27. He should be entering his peak years. But the fact that he has walked out, he walked out in Liverpool and there was all of that bad blood. I think that colours the way we see him as a player sometimes.
Jonathan, David, thanks very much indeed for now. Back with you shortly. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning's papers, including this in the Irish Independent, as they reflect on a massive shock in Dublin as Ireland beat Portugal and Ronaldo sees red. More on that next. You're watching Back Pages tonight, and it's a welcome back to the Athletics football correspondent David Ornstein and Guardian sports writer Jonathan Liu. David, let's go back to you and turn to the Irish Independent, who focus, of course, on a wonderful night for the Republic of Ireland, beating Portugal, keeping their World Cup qualifying hopes alive. Did you see this result coming?
No. However, if you look back to the Ireland game in Portugal some weeks ago, they weren't too far off in Lisbon. I bizarrely happened to be staying in the same hotel as the Ireland squad before that match, and there was a real sense that they could do something. There was a good atmosphere, despite a pretty grim start to life as Ireland coach for Hal Grimson. It wasn't looking good, but they seem to have got things moving in the right direction, and they're still in with a chance now. That's a brilliant victory tonight, obviously. Two goals from the sort of forgotten man of Tottenham Hotspur, Troy Parrott, who's plying his trade at AZ Alkmaar, and Ronaldo with this red card that's going to be all over the papers and social media. But now they put themselves in a good position. They can, potentially snatch a playoff place depending on what happens against Hungary, who themselves got a win tonight, but they've had a mixed record, and Ireland drew with them at home. So yeah, they're in with the shout at their first World Cup. I think it'll be since 2002, and that's a massive win tonight in what looked like an amazing atmosphere.
A morale boosting win. Jonathan, Troy Parrott really taking his chance. Couple of injuries, he's in there up front for Ireland. 13 goals in 14 games for AZ Alkmaar, doing really well in the Eredivisie. He took his chance and really contributed to that brilliant night for Ireland.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the pleasing thing, but particularly over recent games for Ireland, is how many different players have stepped up. Obviously, Ferguson has scored some crucial goals for them this campaign. And against a Portugal side who, as we knew, would dominate possession, they stood up and they defended really well. They countered really well, and they used the crowd to their advantage. I think they have to go to Hungary and win, which is you have to say odds against still. But if they take the energy, if they take the momentum from that game, there's really no reason why they can't.
Yeah, massive game coming up against Hungary on Sunday. Republic of Ireland need to win that. We should talk, David, about Cristiano Ronaldo. Just seemed to, just lose it for a split second, and he's sent off in a flash. First red of his international career, which I guess is saying something because of the long, illustrious career that he's had, but could be quite damaging and could even potentially have ramifications for the World Cup, this red card.
Yeah, that was a crazy moment, and especially given his comments before the match, he was very complimentary about the Irish fans and crowd and the atmosphere, and then promised to be a good boy on the night, which ironically proved to be the opposite. And the pantomime continued as he was sort of booing the crowd or an opponent just before that incident, and sort of mimicking a sort of crying action, and then he was the one who was walking off the pitch in shame. Yeah, it might rule him out of the start of the World Cup if Portugal get there. It's not quite clear yet, but yeah, that was a moment of shame in an otherwise absolutely incredible career that goes on, and you wouldn't bet against him having the last laugh at the World Cup in some shape or form next summer.
Jonathan, what was your take on it?
Well, it was clearly a red. I think it's increasingly redolent of the player that we see at international level these days. He's increasingly frustrated. He's increasingly unable to influence games in the way that he did at his peak. And yeah, it may well be that we're in the almost farcical situation that Portugal may actually want to go through a playoff if it clears Ronaldo to play in America, where let's not forget he hasn't played competitively since 2014. He hasn't been photographed there, I think, since 2016. And we all have our theories as to why that might be the case. But it does seem that it was kind of destined for him to have a last hurrah at the World Cup in America next summer. And if he's not even going to be able to start the tournament, that will be a big blow for him. Maybe not so much for Portugal.
Let's continue our chat about World Cup qualification and speak about Erling Haaland. David, he has all but got Norway over the line and his teammates over the line to this World Cup, first World Cup since 1998. How impressive a feat is that for him as a young player? We should still remember being the talisman to get his country to a World Cup.
A young player who scored 30 goals already this season. I think it's 53 in 47 for his country. it would have been a disgrace if we didn't see him at a major tournament for even longer than it's already been. He should be at every one, and it's amazing to think he's, well, almost certain, it's not quite mathematically secured yet, that he will be playing in the USA, Canada and Mexico, fitness permitting. And, you know, this is, we sometimes talk about potential generational talents. He absolutely is that and more. I say this in a complimentary way, and complete freak of nature in terms of his physicality, his goal scoring ability. We're getting a bit of insight into his life now with his own YouTube program. What he's doing for Manchester City is unprecedented. It's record breaking. Every season last season wasn't so good, but he's posting such numbers that it's just mind blowing. And now that's going to be sort of seen on to a wider audience for his country as well. So yeah, that's really good. And also Martin Odegaard there in the celebrations, despite his injury, he'll hope to be fit for Arsenal soon and helping his country as captain at the tournament next summer.
Yeah, Jonathan, we should recognise that Norway potentially finishing top of a group that includes Italy, but also doing so, as David mentioned there, with Martin Odegaard out injured for a significant period.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we've seen teams turn up at major tournaments before with one big star player. And obviously it's not enough. Everyone wants to see the star player, but we saw with Lewandowski's Poland, we saw Salah's Egypt. Arguably, Gareth Bale's Wales at the last World Cup. The really encouraging thing about Norway's qualification, yes, the goals of Haaland have been extraordinary number and extraordinary talismanic qualities, but he has a team around him, guys like Sørloth and Ødegaard to come back, Oscar Bob, Sander Berge, Nusa. These are all players who they serve Haaland, they play around him, but they contribute as well when needed. And if Norway are going to make a dent at next summer's tournament, that's going to need to happen.
David, very quickly, we're running out of time, but we've got about 30 seconds from you on cricket to the Express. Would a doubt for first test? With that in mind, can England go into that first test with optimism?
They're definitely going with optimism, but that would be a massive blow. It's becoming a familiar theme, Wood injuries. And last time in Australia, I think he took, 17 wickets, played in 4 of the 5 tests, and is England's fastest ever bowler, arguably. And so, yeah, concerning, but they hope he'll bowl on Saturday. Let's see the scan results tomorrow. Otherwise, England still have weapons, and with Ben Stokes back today and 6 wickets, I think it was against the Lions. Of course, controversy about the preparations for this test series, but England and Ben Stokes sound in high spirits. However, it would be a blow to lose Mark Wood for sure.
Thanks very much. Just to recap on that injury issue for Mark Wood, it is a hamstring issue, hopefully nothing too serious. England will be praying from their perspective. David, Jonathan, we are out of time. Thank you so much for your contributions here on Back Pages tonight. And if you missed any of the show, it's repeated at 1:30. The show is also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And do join us again on Friday nights when our guests will be Martin Hardy and Mark Ogden here on Back Pages tonight. On the way in the next hour, we'll of course be concentrating on England